And we are live. Here we go.
Ready, set, go.
Coming to you live, it's the Auto Hub Show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I was at Larry Coleman's seminar. So happy I came, having such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So,
Told you twice.
Take advantage.
Thank you for having me.
I'm at Larry Feldman's seminar, and what I've found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is, the longer it takes, the more money we spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In Recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the Recon process and to the front line. The average days in Recon, and then the time to line are the most important thing to be looking at. I'm Mike Burrell, I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
And good morning. So first of all, we'd like to start with some books. If you weren't already aware, Rapid Recon is not only a sponsor of the Auto Hub Show and a great piece of recon software in the industry, they've also written a number of books on it. So if you're looking for a Rapid Recon book, you can definitely reach out to Anthony or a member of the team at Rapid Recon. There's 2 of them here because there's really not that many other books out there, but also they're great books. Also, how to buy a used car. There's a number of different books in this, a Lemonade Guide, a bunch of others. The thing that was interesting from a perspective here was this book is written by an experienced car dealer. So it's not just some, a disgruntled salesman who used to work for a car dealer who's upset. It's actually a guy who was a licensed car dealer. So it's definitely an interesting book, I'm sure. And that was my books for the week. So go ahead with the disclaimer, Jeff.
Well, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending where you're watching. I just wanted to comment on the books by Dennis McGinn of Rapid Recon. He's my new hero in business, not just because of his great successes, but we shared on him being invited onto an active aircraft carrier out in the ocean there, and he sent me some videos. I told him I wanted to be adopted by him. But our disclaimer is the views and opinion of the guests on the show are those of them and not necessarily the Auto Hub Show or Ian and Jeff, just to cover our butts, as the saying goes.
And you can read it on our website if you're curious. So the show this week is the used car reconditioning show. If you haven't seen Cadillac Man, it's one of my favorite movies. I know some of the people are dead, but definitely interesting movie on car sales and colorful for sure. So let's get into it. Mr. Jeff.
Well, thank you very much. And those of you who know the Auto Hub Show, it's our mission here is to make the automotive industry better, one show at a time, specifically for dealers. And we thank you, everybody, for joining us, for helping make it that way. So we have our guest today. We have an eclectic group of people which have a connection to reconditioning of vehicles, but a totally, I'm not going to say opposite, but from a different angle. And first of all, we're going to interview somebody who's new to the show, which is Brian Steinhauser. Hopefully I got that right, Brian, from
You did?
Eve.ai, not Pave. And Brian, please introduce yourself, your company, your connection to the business and the show today.
Great. I'm Brian Steinhauser. I'm the co-CEO and co-founder of Pave. Pave is the world's first mobile intelligent damage detection platform using a mobile device. And Pave, you can, in about 5 minutes, be able to come back with a condition report that shows all the cosmetic damage on a vehicle, including estimation on costing. So we're sort of that first step for everybody else here who takes care of all that damage.
Very, very cool. So what you're saying is it takes the place of the old car dog that can walk around the car and just tell by his spidey senses what's wrong with it, right?
Exactly. And the difference there is Pave's consistent because it uses AI and it uses human in the loop. So every result is very consistent. It's not a Friday night you're trying to get out or a Monday morning and you're tired. Pave is never tired and always there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next, we have with us a gentleman that we had the pleasure of meeting in person in San Diego, and that's Troy Blackwell from New Venair. Troy, please introduce yourself, your company, and again, introduction of your connection to all this lovely stuff.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks, Jeff and Ian, again, for inviting me on, and it was great to meet you guys down in San Diego. So Troy Blackwell, CEO of New Venair. And really what we do is we focus around removing the previous owner or the previous renter. We deal a lot with the rental car space today, but we have technology really focuses on those heavy smoke odor cars. And the great thing about our patented technology, it's fast, quick, and easy. All with the audience, the other group that's about to speak today. I'm excited because I know a lot about your companies. I grew up in retail. I came from CarMax and AutoNation, so I spent a good portion of my career, 20 years in the retail space. So again, very excited to be a part of this group and talk to you guys a little bit about what we're seeing on the supplier side.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I like that comment, removing the previous owner, and you and Brian can get together and remove the owner by AI. Just kidding. Next, we have Becky Anderson. Sorry, Becky, joining us from CARS. And Becky, let us know what CARS stands for and introduce yourself and the company.
Hi, yes, I'm Becky Anderson with CARS Recon. Started off as Capital Automotive Reconditioning Services, but we are a company, we work with some dealers, but we are primarily in the auction space and do reconditioning for the auctions. We've done a little bit of everything over the years. 20 years we've been in business this March, but right now we focus mainly on the detail shops, the cleanups, and body shops is where we spend most of our time currently.
Well, I have to tell you something, with a lot of years experience at the auctions, the clean, great looking cars always brought more money, always. And even more so in the virtual auctions now, because you don't see the most finite details you would up close, but
Right.
boy, a clean shiny car with dress tires and wheel the best really stands out. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, from our beloved, he disappears from the video there, from our beloved sponsor Rapid Recon, host of us at NADA, is Anthony Greenhalgh. And Anthony, please say hello, and hopefully I got your name right properly.
Yeah, you got it close enough. It's fine. Hello, I'm Anthony with Rapid Recon. I am the VP of Marketing and Sales Operations for this team. I spent 24 years in fixed before I came to work for Rapid. So my main focus here in reconditioning was how do we keep that internal customer happy, because it's certainly not guaranteed that you're going to get their business. You need to earn it. And so I'll bring some experience there to the table today.
Terrific, thank you. Last year, so the video we ran for you guys last year, I loved it because there was a video of a lady who supposedly is the fix-ops director that put all the information in the washroom or that restroom and up on the wall so that the technicians would actually read it. Thank you, everybody. And let's go to the next question, please.
Yeah, as sort of featured in the intro videos where dealers are really talking about reconditioning, there are very few people in the audience who argue against the idea of properly reconditioning used cars. In the case, why aren't used cars for sale on the market in better condition? I mean, what do you think? Let's start with Anthony, since we were just talking to him.
Great, thanks. It's really a timing issue, and my experience has been if there's a backlog in service and body, and the buyer of the car is starting to feel a pinch on time, or the simple fact that they don't have inventory up front, they're going to change their priorities from I need to have a very clean car that's going to bring a lot of gross to I need to get these vehicles out front now and salvage whatever gross I can get on this car and hopefully break even and not get myself into a wholesale situation where I'm going backwards. So I think a lot of times, the service and body departments in a dealership can directly reflect the priorities in the front of the store. And we kind of get complacent and fixed and think that, we've got a customer and they have to do business with us, but they don't, and they won't. Once you get that backlog and that buyer starts to feel the pinch, I've seen them pull cars right out of reconditioning and put them on the front line. And you're experiencing a lot of that today. If the service and body departments can't keep up with what's going on in the front of the store, we're all in business to make money. And those people in the front are going to make the decisions that they need to make in order to keep that thing afloat.
Interesting. Becky, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Anthony, and building a little bit on that, I would say, in my opinion, it's a little two-sided. I think market conditions have dictated that a little bit, a lower form of reconditioning, maybe doing a little bit less, just with the used car selling for higher prices there for some time. I don't think as much reconditioning was really a priority as it had been in the past. They didn't need it to get the return on the vehicle. Another thing I think really has a lot to do with it is the amount of time that these vehicles have been in the process, if you would. Maybe the amount of time they've been out there, the number of owners that they've had, and then kind of what Anthony was saying, the amount of time that you have to complete it. You can't do the job right and with the same quality standards if you don't have the time to really take it through the whole process. So I think kind of all of those things play into a greater picture and really dictate the way the cars are looking now.
Interesting. So Brian, on the AI front, we know that the robots are coming for everybody. What do you think?
Well, I think to what Becky said, the prices of vehicles have been astronomical, used car vehicles. So there hasn't been as much need to recondition because they've been selling through so quickly. However, there's a change now, and I think part of it now is the affordability of vehicles as well. Can consumers afford those vehicles? How much recon you do, and balance that with the cost of what the vehicle is in the market. So I think that's really we've seen over the last couple of years, because we have that data where we see everything that's happening on a cosmetic standpoint anyway of that vehicle, and then we also see on the retail reconditioning side how much is being done opposed to not. And so there's been less over the last 2 years because it hasn't needed to be done in the same way.
Interesting. Mr. Troy, we know that the odor in cars, especially in certain states and provinces, may be an issue. What do you think?
Oh, hey, we love when the states legalize marijuana. I'll tell you that. They keep smoking in the cars, so that's good for us. However, on the recon side, I think the average turn time right now is about 42 days to turn a car. Anthony had talked about customer pay versus internal, and that's certainly something that happens in the dealerships on a day-to-day. And I think it goes back to your standards, your process, and to avoid those kind of shortcuts. What do you want to stand for on your front line with those cars? And I can tell you that that on the websites, so, you have a Carvana's and the Shift and CarMax. They do a really good job of calling even out imperfections, but still have high standards. So those are just some things that I see in the industry kind of as a whole. higher mile cars that we saw that you guys are talking about, certainly. And some of these cars are taking a little bit longer to go through the process. So you just got to be not wanting to do these shortcuts per se and have that car standing tall on your lot.
Mr. Jeff, thanks for that.
You know, it's very funny. Like Anthony mentioned, you know, you get somebody gets nervous and variable in sales, and they're going, no, I want that car up there right now. They grab it, and you know, before I learned the proper way, I did that a lot. You know, it's okay. We'll just get it cleaned up. We'll get it through the shop. You get your shops to that'll just say, well, you know what, you know, sales isn't necessarily my priority right now. I got all these customers that I booked in, and et cetera, et cetera. And again, you know, Peter made a comment that the great change is a-coming. And, you know, the days of grabbing that car that came in on trade and doing a quick safety and rolling it for gobs of money are kind of ending quickly here. And so recon means nice cars sell better. But one of my favorite statements is we've always done it that way. And, you know, you can tell when people are nodding that they know that. So there's a saying that you keep doing what you've been doing, you keep getting what you've been getting. And going back to the Great Reset, not necessarily. So if you could fill in the blank on this one, I love fill in blank questions. Troy, the hardest thing to change in someone is?
I think it's just habits. You know, the associate that's been doing some of these work for a long time. It might be cross-armed, standing in the corner, and you have companies like everybody on this panel that are coming in and trying to show a dealer or technicians a new way of doing something, and they're kind of set in their old ways. Hey, we've been doing it the same way. No one's going to come in here and tell us differently. And so I think that's the hardest thing is, you know, as the great dealerships are the ones that are evolving, you know, you guys are all experiencing this whole final mile delivery. I think that's going to still continue. You know, obviously Tesla's model that you see today, dealers are probably going to get close to something like that, right? So these final miles are going to be very important. There's some things you can't see online, and smell is just one of them. And so that's, for me, you know, a good experience that customer wants to have, and it needs to be consistent. But again, Jeff, I think it's certainly just habits is kind of where I go to.
Great, well, thank you. And I once had a director of ops for the group I was with, not a very nice man, but he said, you got to change a habit. You need 21 days of constant pressure to change that habit. And I remember, you know, seeing the old Mannheim condition report that said odor and had various different levels of odors. And speaking of auctions and orders, Becky, what's your opinion on the hardest change of someone?
I would say mindset. So, you know, I think we can, all of us here agree that, well, reconditioned vehicles bring more money, but the willingness to spend that money sometimes is, you know, overshadowed by the financial proposition there and how much they're going to have to spend to recondition those vehicles. Obviously, you know, you walk a fine line, and you don't want to overspend or spend the money on things that aren't really going to make a difference. But I think just the mindset of dealers and even of the consumers buying the vehicles is really the hardest thing to change.
Well, terrific. That's a very good point. You know, the mindset is everything. I remember in the early 2000s when BMW brought out the redesigned 7 Series, the new buckle back, and the technicians discovered that they were actually had to sit at their consoles on their computers and diagnose the car remotely, and they just go, hey, this isn't going to work. And today, that's all they do. They're now technicians versus mechanics. Brian, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. It's process. Changing process is so difficult. We're sort of set in our ways, and so it's the same. It's habits, it's mindset, it's process. If you can change that process and you can see an uptick of 20% plus, that's when that change sticks. From what we've seen, we have a great story of a dealer who implemented our product, but went in and said, everybody has to use it. Doesn't matter who you are in this dealership. Even if a car comes in on a flatbed, you have to get a pave done on it. And they increased their sales by $9 million last year because of that. Now, it was not easy for him to do that. And that was from the principal, but it worked. And everybody had to follow that new process. And it took him 6 months to get there, but it definitely works.
So what kind of pushback did he get? Because I know my experience has always been when you say you have to do it, there's always a few people that go, no. So what was his experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, in his case, I think what he really pushed hard, and he was on top of it. He was at the dealership every day. He was watching it happen. And if you didn't follow that process, you had 3 strikes and you're out. And he was able to show the benefit though. And I think that's what turns people. If they can see from here to here over a period of time that there's a real benefit, being financial, be whatever it is, time savings, then finally it'll click and they'll get it because it's better for everybody at the dealership.
Well, it's very funny. And, we all think about, reconditioning and about condition reports, etc., as being a sales related item. But of course, in fixed ops, and you can sort of see Anthony there going, in fixed ops, it's a big deal. I always we had to hammer service advisors when they took a car in to do a walk around. The worst thing for me was in my short stint with Harley Davidson, where they wouldn't walk around somebody's bike, and they were at 20% of the customers in service they had fights with because that mark wasn't on my bike before. And the car thinks, boy, if you take your thing and walk around it, Mr. Customer, Miss Smith, customer, Mrs. Customer, we just assign this thing, you know that there's all the damage on the car. Also great opportunity if you got a body shop to upsell there. But thank you. You mentioned process, so I think you and Anthony were actually messaging in between, so you were do a lead-in for him. Because Rapid Recon is obviously, from my understanding, I could be wrong, all about recon process. So Anthony, I know you guys, your whole thing is recon, obviously, and you get a lot of your salespeople get out there and push back, etc. Baby, what's the hardest thing to change in people or businesses?
Well, it is process and behavior. That is the most difficult thing. I used Rapid 3 years before I came to work for the company, and I'll tell you, I made every mistake on the planet, and I did all the wrong stuff. I was originally the manager that went back and said, "We're making this change, and you need to do it, and if you don't, you're out." And boy, was that ineffective. You really need to share the why with your people. They're intelligent. Don't assume that they don't know, or that they may not have a better idea than you. So, when we go through and we're talking about process changes, post the why, put the why in front of them, and help them drive towards something instead of just doing something because you said so. We're in a couple thousand stores, and I've been in stores before where I've met with somebody and I said, what is your job here? And they're like, oh, to check this box. But that's it, to check the box. And they get stuck in a rut because their only thing was to check the box. Where if they knew why they were checking that box, they probably wouldn't be checking it. Somebody else would have been doing it, and that's much more efficient. Brian hit the nail on the head when he said the group made the entire group understand what was going on. We see this all the time where somebody's got a new initiative and they want to roll it out, and like somebody may be attending this meeting today, and they'll leave here going, "That was a great idea. We're gonna do it. We'll do it tomorrow." And they roll it out, and for the first week it's awesome, right? And then the second week it gets a little bit more sketchy, and then somebody calls in sick, and we pull somebody in from the main shop to do something, and all of a sudden that person from the main shop has no clue what we just did for the last week and a half. So Brian's point about making the entire dealership do that and get on board is really key, even though they may not be involved in the reconditioning process, and maybe this is a reconditioning process that you're trying to change. Make sure that everybody's kept in the loop. And I think it was Ian that mentioned it earlier. But the idea of actually putting information in the restroom above the toilet so people can see, read the business while you're doing your business. It's actually really, really, really effective. It's going to help you with your process change.
Well, there's actually a company that does advertising in bars and restaurants where they actually have these big ads for that reason, and they turn that into a whole business. But the example that always jumps at me here is I had the opportunity when I was working with a company called Dealer FX to work with a large Toyota dealership in Beaverton, Oregon. They do about between 300 and 400 ROs per day on the average day. And we were training a process change, not only from the customer meet and greet, but also from the suggested work, and also the technicians were part of it. The biggest fight we got from technicians, whether it be an oil change team or a senior technician, was, hey, they don't even present this stuff. We do the inspection, we identify all this stuff. They don't even present it to the customer. That was their why, was I'm doing all this work. Yeah, I was hand bombing in some of it, but the reason is I can never see that it's being presented. I never get the work. So a lot of it, to your point, was understanding that why. Why should I do it? But more importantly, what's in it for me? How does that impact my day? And once you got that from the technicians, and once you explained that they could then review if it was being presented, and then, really hold people accountable from the top down or from the bottom up, that was a huge thing. And this was a store that arguably is one of the largest from a service point of view outside of Luongo, probably, that I've been in from a Toyota perspective. But I thought that was really interesting, just because a lot of people are just training technicians, but maybe not listening to why they're so resistant to change. I guess would be the way to look at it. Jeff, you had a comment there?
Well, I was just saying that, when you just get something that is one person, when you just get something that is one manager, that is one team, it can fall apart. Like Anthony said, then somebody comes in from a different area and it all falls apart, and it's creating a buy-in. And, I just think back at Peter Smith, who was down in NADA a few days before. He posted that he had the pleasure of walking into Sewell Cadillac, and how the process from every person there was the same. The attention to things, and the fact that it isn't just, the anomaly of one store. This is all the Sewell stores that do this. Everybody's taken care of. They follow the same process. It doesn't matter if it's meet and greet as somebody walks through the door. And as Peter said, he told them, I'm not here to buy a car. And they said, that's okay. You still want a cappuccino. And I'm sure it happens in their service department. I'm sure they follow this, and I'm sure all of their used cars are perfect, even during the great, I don't know what you would call what we've just been through.
And I think a lot of this change management, a lot of times people, as department heads, will look at our employees and say, you're just not working hard enough, or you're not getting this done. And so we have a tendency to put pressure on that employee. Starting by looking in the mirror and realizing that as a department head, it's your responsibility to take away the obstacles that get in your people's way. And once you've done that 100%, then you can sit somebody down and talk to them about maybe work ethic, and maybe they're not doing a few things right. That's a really, really effective way to affect change, is making sure that you're not slowing your people down. That happens far too often.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. Definitely for sure. Ian.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we all talk to dealers every day. Dealers have, obviously a range of opinions, and we saw it at NADA on the Recon side, but also on other sides. And it was quite different from last year's show in Vegas for a lot of reasons, probably because the market's changed. What do you think dealers really need to know about reconditioning, and why they should change as the market continues to change? Let's start with Troy.
Yeah, thanks. Anthony was just talking about some of the obstacles, and I think, it is important for the leadership to go back and observe and invest in your team in training. And, I came from an environment that was very structured, very organized with CarMax. I think you guys all know the story there, but that was a big piece to their success, as their people and process. And so, to me, I think that's the takeaway, the technology and all the things that we see from your companies here are going to help, and speed and quality is also very, very important. So it's okay that we may not have all the answers, but it just depends on when you give the Sewell example and a couple of these others. There's a difference when you walk into those environments, and you can tell just by walking that front lot. So that's really, for me, I think the biggest takeaway for these dealerships listening.
And we had a comment from LinkedIn, Stephen Apicella from Strategic DX. He said, the process of continuous process improvement is or should be an expectation, not a distraction. If our great industry desires anything more than a one-time transaction, we must observe, learn, evolve, learn more, and repeat. And that's, I'm sure, taken from the Kaizen philosophy of Toyota, but definitely, I think that's important, 100%. Becky, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, I think we've all agreed that Shine sells, a properly reconditioned and presented vehicle is going to always bring a premium. But, in our conversation, we've talked a lot about the why and in different departments, especially in a dealership perspective. And I think it's important to not only give people the why, but to make sure that all of the departments are working together and that they all understand the importance of the other's role. Because, you gave the Sewell Cadillac example, and getting that consistent service and that consistent experience every time you walk in somewhere makes an impact on the consumers for sure. And I think you can, anytime there's a hiccup or something happens, or maybe the vehicle isn't standing as tall as you want it to, when you have that consistent service and you know that they're there to help you and to make things right, that makes a difference. So, I think some of it's just old things that we've always done, is just doing the right thing and making sure that everyone's giving consistent service.
Thanks for that. Yeah, there was a post on the weekend. I'm not sure what it was from, but it was talking about Apple and Apple experience. I mean, there's a great book by Kerman Gallo on that. But yeah, the consistency is key, but more importantly, customers have options. So I agree with that 100%. Brian, what do you think?
I think, right from the three of us here, if you can identify what's wrong with the vehicle, that's step one. And then you need to be able to do a proper job of identifying the costing, and do a reconditioning that a customer, the end customer, feels happy about. I love what Troy does. And you're at that 90, you're right at the end of the process, and you step into the car and it smells like a cat or a dog, or and it just ruins that whole experience. So if you can go through this process properly, and you're going to come out the other end with much happy customers, and you're going to put more vehicles on your lot and more vehicles sold.
Anthony, what do you think?
I have to say that I remember years ago getting a Honda Odyssey in, and it had a fine odor and combination of what came out of a cat and Diet Coke or Coke. And we ended up having to replace literally the entire all the seat coverings, and it's just one of those that it came one after the other. And had we had a clue, obviously, how we had a product, we would have gotten rid of it at the auction, because they would have told everybody how stinky it was.
Anthony?
One comment I wanted to ask you. There's two words, one of my favorite two words, well, one word, that you tell a dealer and you watch their eyes roll into their back of the heads, is algorithm. But another word is process. And we've mentioned process many a times. And we know how important it is, but how do you, this is not related specifically to reconditioning. How the heck do you drill in process for people? And Troy, what do you think? How do you do it?
Again, growing up on the retail side, we had an 82-step process for detailing cars at CarMax, and that didn't just happen overnight. That is something that was evolved to, watching, observing, and recommending best practices, but also from a speed and efficiency. Everything from how do you hold a wand when you're pressure washing a car, where do you start, all the way around the vehicle. So again, just years and years. And I think lastly, we had teams that would walk in the morning and do quality walks, and it was full leadership. It was everyone from the GM to the fix or service directors to the detailer that actually did the car. And we would walk morning quality walks, and you would walk about 30 cars and inspect it with a team. And you're really there saying that why did this car make it? If it came out with an imperfection, why? And there was accountability. And so that helped at the largest scale. You know, we had locations where we're selling over 1,000 cars a month. So these were big operations. So again, to me, that's really where that comes back to.
Yeah. And
Jeff?
that reminds me, you know,
Jeff?
like there was a checklist.
Jeff, we forgot to let Anthony answer that question. I'm not trying to distract you, but go ahead, Anthony.
I'm a bad man.
Oh, you're okay. You can pass me up. I don't. No, I think, you know what, triage is probably the best way to describe that. And I think everybody in the room here is going to agree. But how many times have we seen this in the industry? We bring a vehicle in, and its first step in our mind should be service. I want to make sure it's mechanically sound. So you put it through service, but you don't have a process for cosmetic identification. So the main focus of the technician is to make this thing mechanically sound, but he gets it and it smells like cats and Coke, right? But he doesn't care. It's not going to affect me. What's in it for me? Nothing. So he writes up an order for a mechanical repair, and it's $2,500, and you're into the car, right? You spent $2,500, not realizing that you're $3,000 back in cosmetic. And so having a process right out of the gate, even though a technician isn't going to directly benefit from a cosmetic repair, that absolutely 100% has to be part of your initial inspection. The inspection is the whole car. It's the triage of the car, cosmetic, mechanical, whatever it might be, even though you're not directly related to it, that absolutely has to be done.
Would you agree that you would actually have to be I don't know what the nice word is, but after it's done, you have to go over it too.
Yeah, there should be a quality control process. I am not a fan of checklists, because everybody just grabs a list, draws a pen right down one side of it, and then, you know, the car is good. The expectation should be set that if it's not good, then we'll have a conversation. But there should definitely be some QA before that car goes to the front line.
Actually, that reminds me, you mentioned checklist. We're all familiar with the plane in the Hudson from 12, 13 years ago. And what I remember most about the movie is that they went down the checklist, and Tom Hanks, who was Sully, kind of said, no, I'm not doing that. Just start up I think it was the APU, start it now. Oh no, that's number 9. Don't do it now. And they all say that might have been saved them. But my apologies for forgetting, Anthony. But, you know, so comment on process, because, you know, you've mentioned it, I've mentioned it. How do you get people to really understand it? Forget just, you know, no checklist, because I agree, sometimes they just don't even comment on it.
And who do you want to answer the question there, Jeff?
Or Troy. I was asking Anthony, but he disappeared, and Troy appeared.
Okay, so sorry I lost you, Jeff. So answer the question on which process, because I thought I just.
Well, we had just talked about getting them onto. How do you get them on the process?
Yeah, you know, again, I think it's you have to go out and show them and show them the process yourself as a leadership, and then hold them accountable. I think that's the most challenging thing that we experienced and that I've experienced throughout my career. And I've seen it in both different sides, right? I came from one side to more of a traditional with the AutoNation piece, which is very different. It was very different coming from a Pernex type environment into an AutoNation experience. And so, and everyone had their own unique process. So I again, bring best practices, share what I learned and teach. And, but again, it kind of goes back to the leadership. You'll hear me saying that quite a bit. They need to be involved.
Yeah, I think part of it too, I think, is that you have to show how the process is affecting change and how it's a positive effect. So you can't just say, we're going to implement this new process across the board and everybody's going to go for it. You have to do it in steps, I think, and you have to show over month that this change is actually helping everybody in the organization. And at the end of the day, if it's a higher profit, then everybody shares in that. So there has to be a reason that that somebody wants to go ahead and do that and to change your mindset.
And I think, Jeff, I mean, it's really about examples. So when you look at examples, and the one that always comes to mind to me, ironically, is McDonald's. I mean, very much process driven, but there's other examples. I mean, what would happen at Starbucks if people didn't remember your name or didn't care? I mean, that would probably impact their brand and their customers pretty significantly. I mean, pick your store, whether it be Nordstrom's or Amazon or whatever. I mean, if Amazon didn't have a process, they probably wouldn't have a business. So, I mean, there's clearly things there. But to your point, Peter was making some comments about binders and about responsibility. It's no longer about transactional selling. It might have been in 2022, but I think we have to get back to that. We have to retain customers because there's probably going to be more battling for those customers as things change economically. But more importantly, with high interest rates, it's more important than ever to make sure that you're, really capturing your existing customers and taking care of them. So, I mean, I think that's really what Peter was trying to say. But go ahead, Jeff. I just want to mention that.
No, that's, thank you very much, Peter. We're not ignoring you. We definitely welcome the comments. They're spot on. Becky, so, process, and obviously reconditioning should be a process, and it is a process, especially when you're control it, you can control it at the auction level with a team of people whose job is just the reconditioning. But when you get down to the dealer level, because you certainly have an understanding of them, how do you get them to change and understand that process is not a dirty word?
I guess where I think about processes, obviously, with our teams and at the auctions and in the lines, but I think we go back to the why and just making sure that whether it's the dealers or the, your team and reconditioning or the leadership, that everyone understands why that process needs to be followed and how it impacts the end result, because you can see when a process is not followed that you don't get the same result. So providing that, again, just going back to consistency and having a process and following the process and making sure that every person along in that process understands why they're doing it and what that will bring.
So tell me this, because we can actually drill this down to the dealership size level. But your team, the auction's on Thursday, and three car carriers come in Wednesday morning, and they just came through the mountains. They got all these cars from a rental fleet, and they're turning them over because thank God they have new cars finally. And they come in, they got to get them gone. The general manager of the auction says, there's 55 cars here that have to be done for tomorrow because I don't have enough, and I need them for pictures at 4 o'clock. How do you handle that and stick within process?
Right. I mean, and that's difficult for sure. And we deal with that every single week, primarily with Tuesday sales. Those are the most difficult to handle. You just have to really use your best judgment and take cars through the process the best you can. So, you're going to have, that's where leadership, we've talked a lot about leadership. That's where your leadership is really going to have their time to shine, because while we still have to take it through, every process as far, if we're talking about detail, is it really bad on the inside? Do we need to spend as much time on the inside as we do the outside? So you're just going to have, if we're trying to get pictures, we really want them cleaned up on the outside. Like you said, the tires shine, everything looking good. But you've got to make sure if it's full of trash that you get all that out as well. So it's a fine line, and it's one that, like I said, we deal with a lot. You have to do the best you can. And that's where you really want to stick to the processes, though. If you have the right processes in place, we have a lot of processes that our detail line will try to go around something that really is going to make their job easier. And when you're, I said earlier about everyone knowing the why and how they affect someone else, even in a detail lane. The guy in D-Trash affects the interior guy. The interior guy affects the wash bay and all, on down the line to the very end to quality control. So I don't know if I answered that, but you just do the best you can, especially when they come in late. You make them look the best you can in the time that you have.
So are you telling me that which comes first is not the chicken and the egg, but it's the interior comes first, then the exterior?
It does.
It does. Okay, perfect. Troy, your opinion from the retail side, because you have the most retail experience here that I think, maybe I'm wrong, on sales. How does that drill down to selling a car? Where do they take that Becky's experience on the auction side and get down to a retail side?
Yeah, right now, our product kind of definitely plays in this space. Years growing up on that side, when a car would come in for a trade and it would have any indication of this heavy odor or smoke or marijuana or vaping, all the things that we kind of see today, the dealer will usually hit that car about 500 or 1,000 back. And that customer may just leave. It may not just be enough. But if you have a solution like what we provide, they might be able to step up. And on a condition report, when I'd go to the lane and buy cars, or my teams would be out buying cars, we came across heavy odor, we wouldn't buy them. And so we wouldn't even be in there raising our hands. So for us, on the retail side, it's important to cycle time. And I think Anthony talks a lot about that too with their company, using their technology to help expedite that piece of it without sacrificing your quality. And so that retail, winning those customers, every dealership right now is creating buying centers. You're going to start seeing a lot more of that to acquire cars. So because of the whole rental, they're hanging on to their cars a lot longer. So you're not seeing as many of those in the lanes at the auction houses. So, but for me on that retail side, Jeff, that's really what I see, is what technology and services are out there today that these dealerships could start using.
Perfect. Yeah, it's the big question I have for you, because you brought it up a couple of times. So what happens if your detail guys are been sitting in their car smoking up, and then they come back in to clean up their car?
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I mentioned that because I'm involved in a little lot, and we had the detail guys show up the other day, and they're sitting in their van, and I'm telling you something, they had the windows closed and there was smoke coming out of every single possibility air could come out of. So
yeah, so Jeff, think about this, the transporters that may smoke while they're hauling those cars, and then they have to get in the car to back it off the trailer. So, these things happen. That's why we're working with companies like Assertus and some others that can help them in this space. What are their pain points? You have Lease Plan that manages large fleets, and these are challenges. These are things that their leadership hears constantly, because that final mile, that customer receives that car and they open the door, they're like, what just happened? I'm out. What did you guys just give me? And if we have this solution, even a transporter can throw these things in their trucks and within 15 minutes remove this. So again, this isn't for me to promote it. These are the experiences that all of us experience.
Well, at least I didn't bring out a whiteboard and flip chart. So
yeah, exactly. Right. That was next. I was going to be that.
I think just to add to that, from a consumer standpoint, I think transparency plays a larger and larger role. The consumers are smart, and because of social media, they are armed with everything they need about that vehicle they're going to look at. So I think you need to show transparency between if that car came in at a certain condition, you may not fix everything on it, so you need to show what is left for that car. And I think that, and we work with some buying centers that do that. So they'll actually on their VDP page, they'll highlight they'll hotspot the damage, because consumer doesn't want to find it afterwards and go, well, it's right here. That's sort of a change in attitudes over the last, I'd say, 10 years as well, where there's a higher degree of transparency.
Fantastic. Ian?
Anthony, did a comment there? Or are you good?
Yeah, no, I'm comment there. I think a lot of times we think about process and we think, oh, assembly line, right? Well, this is the car business. None of those cars are coming in with the exact same problem. And so don't think about your process as an assembly line. It's got to go to service, then it's got to go to body, and then it's got to go to detail, because that's the way we've always done it. That will get you in trouble. The fact is that used car buyers don't buy cars at an even cadence. As much as we would love for that to be a thing and fixed, it's not a reality. So there are times when we're standing around twiddling our thumbs and that transport truck pulls up and it drops off. Well, wait a minute, there's 5 transport trucks and now we have 50 cars we have to deal with. Get them in, get them triaged, and then that car goes to body, that car goes to detail, that car's going to mechanical. You need to dispatch to the availability of your techs, because the only thing you have to sell is time. And if you're trying to run everything through as an assembly line, it's going to be bottleneck after bottleneck after bottleneck.
Great.
Get smart.
Exactly. What do you think has the greatest effect on a used car? The assessment tangibles, the look, or other? I mean, what do you think? Well, let's start with Anthony. We're just talking to him.
Right. Well, I'm going to say assessment's going to be the number one thing. But I will say nothing kills a deal faster than a smell. You know, the car's beautiful. We got it in. We got it photographed. We got it online. We spent all the money to get the person down to the store. And you pop open that door and you smell something you don't like, you are out. So assessment is the number one thing, because you need to make sure you're addressing that up front. But appearance, that'll kill your deal faster. And you've already spent all that money to get somebody down to your store and you blew it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on all things used car shows on Fridays, and there's lots of focus on, well, we got to get the pictures right, we got to get them online, we got to get leads for the car. But I agree with you. There's probably too much focus on that. Not that it's not important, but when you perceive that online as a perfect car based on photography, and then you show up and it's like, it's a disappointment. That's a huge fail. So I agree with you there.
At Rapid, we call it sensory ready, because so many times time to market is getting your descriptions up and getting your photos ready. But actually time to line does include sensory ready. And I see dealers so many times go through and they do a mechanical reconditioning, then they'll put the car on the front line, and then they'll have outside vendors come through to make that car cosmetically or sensory ready. How many turns did you lose because that thing wasn't sensory ready when somebody looked at it?
Oh, 100%. Troy, maybe you wanted to comment on how important it is that you're not smelling, pipe smell or cigar smell or whatever other smell.
Come on, weed.
other smells.
Yeah, the obvious, you guys are probably all looking at me go, of course I'm going to go to the look, but I agree with Anthony. The assessment is such a very important piece, because poor decisions get made at that early stage of assessment. If they buy that car wrong, or it gets through the shop and something needs to be added that they may have missed, they all start to get nervous about the margin piece of it. And then that's where the shortcuts start happening. So again, I agree on the that piece of it, assessment, and then the look. And yes, you guys are explaining all the things, the little nuances that have to happen. But again, you only get one first impression. And when a customer is walking that lot and they do open a door, and those are just some of the things that they can't see online. And, for us, we're in about over 500 dealerships and primarily on the rental car side today, doing, hundreds of thousands of treatments today.
Fantastic. Brian, what do you think? I mean, obviously appearance
Yeah,
important
I
to you.
agree
But...
too. I mean, I think obviously the business we're in is that piece of it. We add one nugget to it on the assessment side from a cosmetic standpoint. And if you miss things up front, then all down the line you're going to miss that, and you have not a great experience. The customer's not going to have a great experience. But also, there's nothing like smell. You're right. You open that door, and that's it. I'm moving to the next car then.
Fantastic. Becky.
On a hot summer day.
Exactly. Becky, what do you think?
I would agree with assessment. I would just say, proper assessment of the vehicle and making sure that you're transparent and all of that. Obviously, what we do is help with the look of the vehicle. So I hold that near and dear to me as well. But, you can make a car look really pretty. And if it's not a sound vehicle and it hasn't been assessed properly, then you've done all that for naught. Really gauging how much you need to spend on reconditioning has a lot to do with the assessment. At auction, I would say, and I know we're talking more from a dealer standpoint, but you can go to the other side of that and have a car that is sound mechanically and no frame damage, all of that. But if you don't make it look like the assessment says it is when it goes across the block, no one's going to want to buy it because they're, just what they're seeing is not what they're reading the vehicle was. So
in the auction world, you're very right. The auctions will assess the car, and most dealers actually don't look at their assessment. They might look at a condition report, they might scan it over. But if the car looks really good on the auction world, not say real world, auction world, they're going to pay and they're going to click. Their fingers are going to be sore from clicking it so much. But if somebody doesn't pick up on it and disclose, that's a big deal. Because at least I've been burned too many times by I bought a pretty car and I got it and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to arbitrate it. And they said, we told you.
Right. And I think from a dealer standpoint, obviously a consumer, they're going to look at the car online a lot of times and look at all that. But you get there and, we've talked about some things like smell. And if mechanically it's not, up to speed, then they've really, at that point, I think that dealer is going to hurt their reputation more than anything.
For sure. We're running out of time. Thank you all very much. I want to leave this with one thing before Ian closes it up. Each one of you, words of wisdom for our audience, and we'll go to Anthony first.
Wow. No, I'm here. Words of wisdom. And you put me on the spot. I mentioned it earlier, but as department heads, make sure that you are removing the obstacles that slow your people down. Look in the mirror first and decide what you can do to help make their lives better before you pull them in and reprimand them for not working hard enough. Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, would say that's that old SMART acronym, so it's very true. Troy.
Yeah, just create a process, create your standards. What are you guys going to stand for? I would say, own it as leaders and do a lot of follow-up and accountability. Those are all the things that will lead you to success. So, and look at the solutions. Again, I keep going back to this panel today. They have some great technology that's out there. Don't think about what you've always done as the way to do it. There's some tools that can help you improve your process, your cycle times, and all those needs. So that's the advice I'd give.
Fantastic. Thank you. Becky.
I think, we've seen a lot of change over the past couple of years and continue to see it on a daily basis. And we're definitely in uncharted waters, if you will. And so I think it's going to be really important with our teams and our leaders that we adhere to our processes and best practices to have the most success.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Brian, I have not forgotten you. Words of wisdom for our audience to leave everybody with your sage advice.
Oh, there we go. I'd say with process, it's easy to say process, but you have to get buy-in from your people. And so you have to bring them along that path, and success has to be within everybody in that organization if you really want to have change. So I think being inclusive in that process and from consumer standpoint, transparency, it's becoming more and more important that you're transparent with what you're selling, and you'll get a win-win if you do that.
Thanks for that. And thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for all the input. Obviously, recon is important on used cars, but more importantly, having a process and continuous improvement, I think, is my takeaway. But also, don't forget the smell, because that can really ruin a good opportunity. Have yourself a great day and a great week. Thanks again. Here we go. We're out.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.